Uh, Hello, everybody. We're going to begin. My name is Derek Armitage. I'm based at the University of Waterloo and representing the Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership. Welcome you to this thematic webinar. Just before we get going here, I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. So the Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership is a research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 members from Africa, Asia, Canada, and internationally. The goal of the partnership is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability, and we do so in several different areas and ways. One is through the co-creation and co-production of knowledge on small-scale fisheries. One is developing a repository to support and house that knowledge and the outcomes from our work. We're focusing on developing transdisciplinary capacity to support small-scale fisheries and in synthesizing and integrating knowledge, the co-produced knowledge, in ways that support governance and policy of the fisheries. We are conducting community-engaged research in 6 countries in Asia, in Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Thailand, and Malaysia, and 6 countries in Africa, Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. And doing so, the V2V partnership is bringing people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing some of the global challenges facing small-scale fisheries around the world. The V2V thematic webinar series is an initiative of the Global Partnership, and it really is to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability, themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries. The goal is to feature academics and representative of governments and non-governmental organizations, practitioners, members of civil society, and so on, all who have made a significant contribution to the theoretical, practical, and/or policy aspects of small-scale fisheries, both locally and globally. The seminar series takes place on the last Friday of every month and will continue to do so during 2024. It's available through live streaming on YouTube, and details regarding the monthly webinars, including speakers, topics, and titles, and links to the webinar platforms and many other great resources are available on our webpage, which is at www.v2vglobalpartnership.org. So it's today's webinar is the 5th in the series of thematic webinars planned for 2024, and we've had many since 2021 when it first started. And it's very much my privilege today to introduce Dr. Ghazi Islam as our distinguished speaker. Professor Ghazi is based at the Graduate School of Business at the University Tan Abdul Razak in Malaysia. He is a professor of economics with a specialization in environmental economics and natural resource management. His applied work is quite varied and includes the governance of marine resources and a significant focus on marine protected areas and ideas of enforcement and compliance and the challenges as such. Also in the context of community-based fisheries management. He has also a focus on livelihoods and equity, and of course, social capital, which will be the focus of his talk today. Ghazi is also a significant and really crucial member of the V2V partnership as a country co-lead, and is also as a mentor and supporter of many early career researchers and many of the V2V initiatives that we have on the go. So it really is a great honor to have Professor Ghazi joining us today, and for his talk, Does Social Capital Secure Livelihoods of Small-Scale Fishery Households? So, again, thank you very much, Ghazi, for joining us today. We really appreciate the time you're taking and looking forward to your talk. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can share your screen and we'll get going once you do that.
Thank you, Derek, for your kind introduction.
Great.
I am very pleased to the B2B team to invite me to talk in this B2B webinar today. Today, I am going to talk about the social capital and how social capital contribute the well-being of smaller scale fishing communities in Asia. I will give an overview of the small scale fisheries demographic and social overview. And I will discuss about poverty and livelihoods of small scale fisheries. Then I will talk about the sustainable livelihoods approach and the social capital, how social capital contribute to the livelihoods of small scale fisheries. And I have selected two areas to share with you about the case studies in Bangladesh and also in Malaysia. So the SSF in Asia is the group who are the poorest of the poor, both economically, socially, and geographically and politically. And they have a low income and they have inadequate food and poor housing conditions, and livelihood assets are limited. And fishing occupation is their primary occupation by heredity, and it is intergenerational and historical social cultural identity of the smaller scale fisheries. And fisher households have a traditional fishing skills, and they have a valuable indigenous knowledge of the fishing families in the different parts of Asia. In particularly Malaysia, fishers are predominantly Malay SSF community, and in Bangladesh, the ethnic groups are mixed, mostly Hindus, but the Muslim fishers also fishing as a smaller scale fisheries in Bangladesh. So we look at about the diversity of the smaller scale fisheries, about their multiple gear use, about their multi-species characteristics, and different water body and ecosystem, and also different property rights in the different context. And they use different category of the fishermen, like full-time fishers, part-time fishers, subsistence fishers, and also category in terms of poverty group, like very poor, I say moderately poor, or moderately rich. So they have also category in terms of economic groups. And if we look at about the equipments and gear they use, a lot of variety of the means they use, like hand lines, long lines, traps, gill nets, and also fish aggregating devices, and a lot of indigenous means of fishing they use in the different locations. And fishers are vulnerable in terms of seasonal unemployment, seasonal like crisis of income, and also climate events, health problems, and they incur a lot of economic loss every year by this vulnerability in the SSF. And these are some pictures to illustrate how the different gear used by different fishermen for targeting different fish species for their different purpose. If you look at the floodplain fisheries on the top, this fisherman is a part-time fisherman, and this fisherman is fishing in the floodplains just to meet their subsistence need for fish for food. Whereas the other fishers, they use the hook and line to target the specific species, and they use the different type and different size of the gear. Like if we look at the fisherman showing the mesh size of the gear, so there is a lot of different mix of ranges of mesh size they use for different fish casts. So this is the like overview of how diversity exists in the small scale fisheries. And there is a socio-economic importance of SSF in terms of their livelihoods and national income. and domestic like economy. So there are 4 million hectares of open water fisheries in Bangladesh, and these fisheries are so productive and one of the richest and complex fisheries in the world. And fish supply 60 to 70% to meet the animal protein of Bangladesh and Malaysia, and 80% of the households depend on the fisheries for their living. And in terms of the fish species, there are different species available in the habitat. Like in Malaysia, 300 and above type of species in the habitat, and in Bangladesh, then 200 and plus species. But this is not counted about the miscellaneous species. There are a lot of small miscellaneous species also available in the water body, which is not counted in the data, and this is most accessible preferred species for food and nutrition for the small scale fisheries. And there is a fisheries habitat, very productive habitat like marine otters, coral reef habitat, and Bangladesh inland floodplain habitat. They are very suitable for multi-species fishery, and they provide their income and livelihood from the habitat. And both men and women are engaged in fisheries equally in different activities in the value chain. So this is how the family and fishing households are interconnected with the fishing in the small scale fisheries industry. And small scale fisheries provide benefit to reduce the poverty, for food security, employment generation, income of the households. They also provide a safety net for the SSF community. And very importantly, they have also provide the value for cultural heritage, and it's a symbolic for the nation's long-standing fisheries heritage in Asia. So this is there are the two pictures I like to show that how small scale fisheries and this produce a valuable economically valuable fish species by different gears. So this is the one harvest from the small scale fisheries. After the harvesting, they bring the lot of very valuable fish in the marine coastal areas. Another picture showing the inland fisheries where they produce a lot of valuable fish to export and to sell in the market, international market. Another things I like to also share with you about the social outlook about the fisheries. And in the village community, they have a fish market, and people gather in the market just not for buying the fish, just to see the fish, and they are happy to see the different fresh fish in the morning. This is how the society are very much engaged in the fisheries and small scale fish. And we can also see the another picture where this small kid, they follow the family to sell their fish, and they are also looking at the fish and some helping for sorting out the fish. So just to show how the rural community are involved in small scale fisheries. Now, fisheries in crisis, particularly the small scale fisheries. And if we look at the crisis in fisheries, in inland fisheries, their habitat have been degrading in the past, like coral reefs habitat and different species like sea turtles. They're overexploited, and overfishing, and due to overcapitalization, over capacity, and climate change and pollution, all of the drivers are clearly showing that fish stock has been declining over the years. And in Bangladesh floodplains, you see that how they destroy the fish juveniles when they are fishing indiscriminately in the floodplains when water recedes in the dry season. So this is how they have fishing and overfishing and degraded the habitats. And there is also a lot of anthropogenic pressure due to the socio-demographic change, due to age and labor market, due to employment, shortage of employment, due to behavior of the fishermen and the attitude of the fishermen. We can see that in Malaysian context, fishermen are getting older. So new generation, they don't like to involve in fishing particularly. So the fishers are older. They don't go to the far for fishing, and they have a shortage of active fishermen in Malaysian coastal fisheries. If you look at about the attitude and behavior, the new generation, they want to do some like less hard work and not fishing with a high hard work. So this is another attitudinal changes in the generation. And the fishing ground is insecure in accessing fishing ground, and conflicts, social conflicts, destructive fishing, also inequity in terms of the access to the water bodies, and the consequence is the societal loss of the natural resource productivity and benefit, and lack of social power among the small scale fisheries to control and protect their own fishing habitat, and there is a poor compliance and regulation and enforce the regulations of fisheries, and they have low incentives to cooperate for protecting the fisheries, and there is a poor coordination and communication among the different stakeholders, government, NGOs, and fisheries stakeholders to improve their capacity building to manage their fisheries. So a study motivation is like I like to see the study about how the livelihoods of the different livelihoods of the SSF can be enhanced by social capital or social factors. So we have selected the water bodies in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh water body is like existing property rights is both common property resources and also private property. And there is a unique characteristics of the floodplain bills. During the rainy season, it is a common property resources. When water recede during the dry season, this property become private. So this is how the privatizing the public resources in Bangladesh, water or floodplain water bodies. And their poor fishers are unable to secure access to the fisheries for their use and for their livelihoods throughout the year. And they have a social conflicts and livelihood vulnerability, equitable benefits, and that results in marginalization in the SSF community in Bangladesh. And there is encroachment of commercial vessels in Malaysia, conflicts over the access to fisheries, and SSF has limited access to financial credit and loss of productive assets during the vulnerability and crisis, economic crisis. And some of the conservation measures, they have restricted fishing in protected areas, in sanctuaries, and that negatively affect the livelihoods of smaller scale fisheries. So, And in Bangladesh, there was a community-based management project implemented, and it was very successful in sustaining the SSF of Bangladesh. So I'd like to share some experience of Bangladesh context of CBFM project and also Malaysian context about the fisheries management. And these three pictures are showing how the different houses they have, the small scale fisheries. And this is how their different assets and capabilities of livelihood assets were differently in the different locations. So we use the livelihood framework, and according to the livelihood framework, it has 5 types of assets, both tangible and intangible assets. And these intangible or tangible assets provide security of access in the resources, and 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 based on the different assets, they have more access to different assets, and reduce the vulnerability and poverty, and enhance the livelihoods based on the different access to different assets. So poverty measured by social capital has been explored extensively in the literature, but some studies has clearly acknowledged social capital access can clearly enhance the livelihoods of poor fishing communities, uh, uh, and and there are different study also show that bonding, bridging, and linking relationship with the different stakeholders can provide more access to the assets. And and the research question is how this smaller scale fisheries can sustain their livelihoods, reducing their poverty through equitable access to the fisheries. In Bangladesh, there was a partnership project for co-management and community-based management project, which has implemented in 2 phases for 10 years from 1994 to 1999, and second phase 2021 until 2007. So this is the CBFM project, which was action research project coordinated by World Fish Center, and there are 11 NGO partners working with the Department of Fisheries. So this is a very massive co-management project implemented in Bangladesh, and they provide support to 20,000 members directly benefited from this project, and 135,000 beneficiaries directly or indirectly supported by the project. The objective of the CBFM project was to promote an equitable distribution of the fisheries benefit within SSF communities, and to enhance the fishers' human capital and social capital to develop different income generating activities, and to develop an integrated social ecological system, and also to strengthen the community-based organization who can regulate access to fisheries and protect the overexploitation of the fisheries resources, and to disseminate the policy information to advocate for policy sense. So this is the activities we have been conducted in Bangladesh. Like we organized in the CBO 130 CBOs in the different water body levels, and it include different type of water bodies, and CBO members voluntarily participated in the management decisions, and NGOs and government facilitated the connections between the multiple stakeholders to resolve the problems. And the project provided some awareness building about incentives to the fisheries to cooperate and conserve the fisheries, and the CBOs are able to develop their management plan to establish fish sanctuaries to protect the resources and to protect the unauthorized fishing in their fishing ground. And also the administrative support provided and also NGO support for microcredit to the organized fishers. And also there are support for capacity building, training, and some of the awareness building meetings for improving cooperation among the fishers in the wider community and to mediate the social conflicts. This is the a regular meeting happened in Bangladesh at the water body sites where government officers, NGO representatives, and community meet every month to discuss about the project and monitor the progress of the community-based fisheries management projects. So this is Bangladesh, where we have interviewed about 300 households in 40 water bodies in the rivers, bills, floodplains. And in Malaysia, we have interviewed 182 fishers in one island, in the largest island in Malaysia, in the northern coastal area. So this is the location of the study and the fishing villages and community. And we use the livelihood asset variables like human assets, natural assets, physical assets, financial assets, and social assets. And we use the structured questionnaire to measure the livelihood index to conduct the study. And we use the structural equation modeling, multiple regression models to understand which livelihood assets are more important for their livelihoods well-being in the SSF in Bangladesh and in Malaysia. What we have got the results from the study is household income increased in the less restricted water bodies, like in the rivers and floodplains. But in the closed bill, the income reduced because of the high operating costs. Fishermen are not able to spend upfront cost for the lease fees and other operating costs for aquaculture, for example. So this is the income impact. And the income impact on the income vary between the different fishermen according to their asset level of assets. Those who got a valuable gear, they have increased their income compared to the less like more poor households. Right? So, and we have got another important results that the project households, they have increased their alternative employment opportunity and diversified income from the different activities. And we have got that the households or small scale fishery households in Bangladesh and also in Malaysia, the family size is larger compared to the average household size in the non-fishing households. And fishers in coastal areas are relatively older compared to the plain fisheries, over like floodplain fisheries. And fishermen in the floodplains could diversify the livelihoods options compared to the coastal fisheries, like in terms of farming activities, in terms of tourism activities, in terms of different business and trading activities. And both small scale fishers in Bangladesh and Malaysia, they have shortage of physical and natural assets. During the crisis, they had to sell their assets to meet the economic crisis. And this reduce access to the physical assets because of losing their assets, losing their land asset, losing their other capital assets during the crisis. And we have also got that the project fishermen has secured their access to both formal and informal credit from different sources, formal sources and informal sources. In terms of the social capital, we have got that social capital contributed significantly to the livelihood assets, and mainly the fishers who have more affiliation with the other organization, other groups in the community, they have greater access to the livelihoods. And more participation actively in the fisheries has improved their confidence, and that significantly impact on the attitude of the community-based organizations to be able to participate in the decision making of management plan. And the community-based organizations are more willing to help each other due to the good relationship and cooperation. And they have a trust, but trust has a mixed results. Trust significantly improved their livelihoods in the homogeneous community compared to the heterogeneous community. Like in Malaysia, they have homogeneous community. All the fish SSF are mainly Malay fishermen. They have more cooperative and more united compared to the fishermen in the floodplains. They have mixed ethnic groups and mixed cultural groups in the fisheries. So this is another findings we got in terms of the social capital. And we have found that the social conflict quickly resolved in the project areas compared to the control areas. And this is a very good impact on the social capital, how to resolve the conflicts in the community within a very short period of time. And therefore, we found that there is a considerable success in terms of social and human capital to achieve the CBFM project objective compared to the control fisheries areas. And these key findings of the livelihoods of SSF is CBOs in inland water bodies established the legal rights because of the support from government and NGOs. They were able to enforce local management rules and regulations, and they are able to prevent the encroachment. And 80% of the CBOs were involved in management of the water bodies directly. NGOs made active efforts to link of the CBOs and other stakeholders for management of the fisheries. And SSF has a strong network with the government agencies, with other institutions to reduce the social conflicts. And a significant impact on the attitude of the SSF after the project implementation. They have improved their cooperations among the stakeholders in the community and local representatives and local power groups. And they have enhanced the trust in the community that facilitated to link with the government agencies, with the credit providing agencies, local people, NGOs to support their livelihoods. And the poorest fishers have limited access to financial credit. So the relatively better off fishers have more access to the credit compared to the poorest of the poor community. Because of the some collateral issues in the and trust issues in the society. And natural capital substantially contributed to the income of fisheries in the less restricted natural capital, in the open access natural capital compared to the more restricted natural capital. And physical capital was a negative and non-significant predictor of household income due to selling their valuable assets during the crisis and vulnerability every year. The diversity and complexity of socio-cultural and existing political conditions, it is not always easy to define the SSF community, and challenges to define the community with the complexity of existing property rights arrangement in the fisheries. And granting use rights to limited period of time is not a guarantee to limit the fishing effort and protecting the resources from the threats. And there is a need to a long-term commitment by the government, provide a long-term support to implement the community-based activities after phasing out of the project. And security of access to fisheries must be prioritized in the successful small-scale fisheries livelihood projects. And the moderate poor fishers gain relatively more access to the livelihoods asset compared to the poorest community. And more support from the government and NGOs is inevitable for the fair and equitable distribution of the benefits. Social capital factors contribute to the livelihoods, but the cooperation among the partners is not enough to reduce the conflicts. Need to convince the powerful government agencies to give a preferential control over the fishery. Fishers' access to financial credit and physical assets are critically important for the livelihood security during the crisis time. Establishing a social safety net for the livelihood security of the poor fishers should be prioritized in the policy. Health services are extremely poor in the SSF. Poor fishers spend a lot of money and expenses for the health services, and the fishers are aging in the coastal communities, and they are shifting the fishing to the tourism activities to be and that need to be explored clearly about the sustainability and equitable the benefits of the SSF in the future. Local institutions are relatively weak in coastal fishing communities in Malaysia due to overlapping jurisdictions and poor coordination. CBOs have greater influence over decision making in Bangladesh. So government need to encourage the local institutions for sustainable fisheries management. There is no single way to create effective and sustainable institutions that can address the challenges for managing of complex and diverse fisheries systems. Fisheries management by CBOs and sustainability is a complex process which requires major shifts of long-held policies and principles by the government. And poor fishers need a strong facilitation from NGO and government to legitimate more accountable decision-making body to secure equitable access to fisheries and improve livelihoods of small-scale fishing communities. That's all from me, Derek. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the VTU partnership for inviting me to talk.
Great. Thank you very much, Ghazi. That was really interesting. I thought all sorts of very helpful insights on Bangladesh and Malaysia, small-scale fisheries contexts, and the photos are also, of course, always very helpful because they provide a picture of sort of some of the things you're talking about, both the livelihoods, and see lots of images of people and working together and the relationships to collective action and social capital as well. So really, really helpful discussion and talk, and also some very interesting methodological approaches with the structural equation modeling and so on. That's quite fascinating. So we have a little bit of time for questions, and some questions are coming in on the chat, and I'll convey those to you as well. And maybe just as some of those questions start to come through, I will maybe just start with an initial question, because I think it was really fascinating that you highlighted the relationship between social capital and this idea of greater opportunity for income diversification or alternative livelihoods. And I think that's a really key relationship. Can you provide an example of what that is? So, for example, what are some of those alternative livelihoods or income diversification opportunities that this social capital is actually bringing out?
Yes. In the context of Bangladesh, I think the fishermen are sharing the water for different purposes, for the farming activities, for agricultural productions of the different aquaculture, farming. So in water sharing is a important context and challenges in Bangladesh floodplain fisheries. And during this dry season, fishers can engage in the different farming activities if they have they have the sources of like capital to invest in these activities. So usually they are finding some sources of the capital, and they are dependent on the informal capital sources, which is very difficult and very exploitative,
Hmm.
high rate of interest. So they don't find a easier interest like loans from the different sources. So during the CBFM project, the NGOs helping to provide some of the a small amount of credit to provide the opportunity to take up some opportunity to for employment and income generating activities additional to the fisheries. That is the one. And there are some of the local in investors also like to help the community to improve their livelihoods through the interactions, through their cooperations and relationships. That also important.
Great. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned that then you were using the CBFM project as an example of that, and that's actually a nice segue to a question that has come in from Nazrul Rimon. Um, the question is, from my experiences, I know the outcomes of many excellent CBFM and co-management initiatives in Bangladesh weren't necessarily sustained after the project period. So, for example, the empowerment of coastal communities project and the Bangladesh Marine Fisheries Capacity Building Project. So I presume those ended at a certain point. So what do you think are the reasons for that? Also, how do you contrast these with similar initiatives in Malaysia?
The context is very different between Bangladesh and Malaysia. Bangladesh is like the resources are managed by the so-called powerful groups. Powerful groups mean this risk community, and all these the water bodies. Most of the public water bodies under the control of rich people. So the fishermen are very hard to include in the management of the fisheries. So when the project implemented, the project directly involved in this negotiation and conflicts between the community and the management or administration, like the land department or revenue department. So and some of the conflicts mediated by the involvement of the Department of Fisheries. But when the Department of Fisheries has completed the project, like CBFM project, there is no agency to support administrative support or management support to the community to protect the sustainability of the access. So this is another important thing. So it need to be sustainable support for the long term. Otherwise, this is a long-held property rights established already in Bangladesh. It's difficult to like sense these property rights.
Hmm. Yeah. And so how does that compare to Malaysia? What are some of the
Malaysia is Malaysian context is different. Malaysian they have license to the fishers to access to the fisheries. So it's straightforward. If they have no license, they are illegal. So they can there are no open fisheries, no like private fisheries. Although there are a lot of complexity in terms of encroachment, in terms of the um, like enforcement of the rules, but their licensing is the main indicator of the management of fisheries.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So we have another question here, and it's kind of gives us an opportunity to think a little bit about the temporal scale. And when we think about concepts like social capital, and this is a question from Kuparan Viswanathan, is the social capital of small scale fishers increasing or decreasing over time? And I suppose that's a question you can reflect on both in the Bangladesh and the Malaysia context. And
Yeah, yeah.
imagine it's a great
This is
place
a
to.
very good questions, and it's a very good questions for the also for the researchers and academics, because if we look at the community are there, and a community is changing their strategy because of the pressure, external pressure, and they are they are changing in terms of social aspect and in terms of economic and political, right? So due to the different pressure, they cannot keep their long-held social relationship. And then long-held about this cultural like value, social value. So they have to sense their occupation. They have to sense their like activities for their livelihood sustainability. That is why the fishermen are not going to teach their children to fish. That is why the fishermen are moving to other livelihood opportunity for fishing, and there are a lot of fishing conflicts because of the competition and because of the like low compliance of the fishing rules and acceptance of the rules like this.
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, just thinking about these long-held social relationships and values and
Yeah.
things like that, and one of the things that you've been chatting about and is really focusing on the connections between social capital and livelihoods and access to tenure and credit and markets. Just in relation to these changing values and systems, do you see a relationship to how social capital is maybe increasing or benefiting values around conservation and protection, or are those also sort of becoming more challenging to find cohesion around groups of people to support protection goals and or objectives of things like that?
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, because we fishermen, the small scale fishermen need support, subjective support, like not competitive, like they cannot compete with other groups, other social groups. They need a support, and the support in terms of like administrative support, management support, and social support. Without social support, they cannot like move on to their activities. Right? So this is there's some fishermen who are really poor, and poorest of the poor. They cannot like voice out their need,
Hmm.
their rights.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a nice connection to another question that's sort of linking to this from Waziri Ali Hamad. It is observed that most small-scale fishers are poorest of the poor, and how their social. So the question is, how can their social connections help them specifically to reduce their vulnerability of poverty?
Yes. We can see the COVID-19 time, and we can give a lot of examples during the like floods and cyclones. We can see how social cooperations and relationships can meet this crisis during the cyclone, and in Bangladesh, for example, during the cyclone, they come up and build their like their embankment to protect their life, protect their house, so protect their living. So in similarly, during the crisis and vulnerability, whether it is vulnerable for the climate, vulnerable from the like harvesting of this fish or harvesting of the agricultural crop, whatever it is, if the society help during the crisis, it is a benefit for the society relationship and cooperations.
Hmm. Yeah, and so you've talked about the importance of small scale fisheries needing support, and you also early on in your presentation talked about the economic losses that small scale fisheries are facing and
Yes.
limited access to financial credit. Are
Mm.
there specific economic support programs or subsidies provided to small scale fisheries in Malaysia, for example, whether it's fuel subsidies
Yes, yeah,
or loan
yeah,
schemes?
yeah, yes. Subsidy, yeah, subsidy is a lot of like controversy about subsidy.
Mhm.
But in Malaysian small scale fishermen, they receive a monthly subsidy, and also they receive the subsidized fuel, petrol and diesel for fishing. But of course, they are very also very much supported from the government. But in Bangladesh, there is no support like about the subsidy, a monthly subsidy. But it's one kind of subsidy is, but they need a security during the crisis time. They need a support during the like vulnerability to a support system is in a permanent, so that they don't need to look for the subsidy anyway.
Hmm. So are you able to isolate, some of these economic supports like subsidies, as a key variable in supporting social capital?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. In Malaysian context, yes,
Okay.
the poorest of the poor, they need subsidy for their well-being. They definitely need. Uh, but in Bangladesh context, very mixed community in Bangladesh in the fisheries, very multi characteristics. Is difficult to understand about how subsidy can provide the benefit to the groups.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting comparison. Okay. Another question here. Who is responsible for maintaining social capital in small-scale fisheries? Is it the role of government or NGOs or the role of fishing communities?
I think it is most important partners is the government, and a government linked to the Department of Land and the Ministry of Land, who provide the access or lease to the different groups. These are the primary agencies for this smaller scale fisheries sustainability. So, and in terms of economic revenue, uh, uh, even with the community engagement, the revenue is uh, more compared to the no community-based fisheries management project, because without community-based project, the benefit from the waterborne resources goes to somewhere else. It's
Hmm.
not going to go to the economic development of the country. So this is another aspect, whether we need more revenue for the society, or we need more revenue for the one group of the people, which is inequitable distribution of the benefits.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. So we have a question here from Aini. How do you view the role of social capital in shaping resource management? So which we often refer to as co-management. So the connections between social capital and the strength of natural resource management or co-management.
Yes, co-management, they have organized the groups, and the organized groups are like democratic groups. Every year they have election to find out the leader of the group. So it is a more like a legitimate group, an accountable group to the community, and they are also helping the community to have more social engagement and relationships, so that they feel that this is our resources. We need to protect our resources. So which was not possible before the community-based project. They are not organized in a group. The group, maybe the leaders of the group, not very responsible. So this is how the community-based groups are more responsible and accountable.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Um, okay, so we just have maybe a few more minutes. So if there's any other questions that people want to put into chat, I would encourage them to do so now. One of the things that I appreciated at the end of your presentation was you sort of laid out some of the implications of the results. What does this all mean? And I'm wondering, from a big focus of our project of the V2V partnership, of course, is to support transitions from vulnerability to viability. So based on the results of your work, what would you say are really some of the key leverage points or most important things to be able to support that transition from vulnerability to viability? And it can be very much in a Malaysian context or a case-specific context.
Yeah, in Malaysia, co-management was never popular, but although they have fishermen groups and institutions at the local level, but the institutions are not strong because of the less lack of support from the government and NGOs and civil society. So if the community-based fishermen groups are strong and then protect their fisheries, that will be a transition point for viable fisheries in the future. So you need more support from the government and NGOs and civil society to strengthen the local institutions.
Okay. Yeah. So the strengthening of local institutions is crucial, and I'd imagine Uh, that means giving up a little bit of control and power and authority, however. So there's a bit of a tension
Yes.
now, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we have another question that came in from Patrick McConney. Can state authorities be neutral actors given power incentives to build or undermine social capital, depending on whether fisher folk collective action supports government agencies or not, which actually is kind of what we were just chatting about. That's a very nice question. Yeah.
Uh, I, I, I did not get the question clearly. What is
Yeah.
the question is about? Can
Yeah.
you
So
just repeat?
I'll reread it. So can state authorities be neutral actors, given the power incentives to build or undermine social capital? So, we're thinking about institution building for community-based fisheries organizations, and there's a
Yeah.
key role for the state, but
Yeah.
are they
Yeah.
neutral
Yeah.
actors in this? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good questions. Yes. Uh, the Department of Fisheries or try to be neutral in the play during the community-based fisheries management project, and they have a lot of direct conflicts between the Ministry of Land and the community, and the role of the Department of Fisheries was a key to mediate the conflicts and give access to the fishermen. So that was a very important challenges how the Department of Fisheries or key agencies of the fisheries can play the neutral role during the implementation of the community-based project. That is was very important. That is why all fish center are always coordinating the project, whether the support from the government and NGOs and fishermen are there or any other problems to tackle during the project implementation. That's the
Yeah. Good. Okay. Really, really interesting insights and conversations and some great questions and some challenging questions as well. Um, I'm not seeing any further questions that are coming in from the chat. I know I've found this very informative and insightful. And again, a lot of the work that you're doing in Malaysia has a big influence on sort of the regional perspective that we're trying to build in the V2V partnership as well. And I think the ideas around supporting that transition from vulnerability to viability maintains is a really key focus. And the insights from your research is definitely supporting that. So I wanted to thank you. Ghazi, thank you very much
thank
for
you.
your
Thank you
presentation.
very much, Derek,
It's
for
great.
inviting this talk and I sharing some of my thoughts and experience. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's our pleasure, absolutely. And thank you to the audience for their many great questions and for participating in this as well. And we look forward to the next thematic webinar, which will be taking place again on the last Friday of the month, and appreciate everybody's participation. So thank you very much, and have a
Thank you.
great rest of the day or evening, wherever you may be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.